Welcome to the $1 Billion Podcast, a weekly show about the entrepreneurial journey and making it big in any industry. We're your hosts, Joe White and Kane Daniel. Welcome to the $1 Billion Podcast. It's our pleasure to have with us today Jamie Prickett. Jamie, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this.
Jamie Prickett is a proud husband and father of 9 children. There's something to talk about in and of itself. He and his wife, Leanne, launched Experior Financial Group in January of 2014. They've lived their entire lives in Ontario, and after being in the insurance industry for a combined 20 years, Jamie and Leanne knew there had to be a better way to build a business in this field. Their company now staffs over 80 individuals and contracts over 40 developers for their tech platform, and they've grown their sales force to over 6,000 licensed agents with 30 branch locations across Canada. Last year, they became the first Canadian insurance agency to expand into the USA market and are now licensed in all states. Jamie's passion is training and developing leaders in business who will see their leadership qualities spill over into the rest of their lives to help them become all-around better people. He believes that how you do anything is how you do everything. So, Jamie, it's fantastic to have you with us.
Awesome, man. Pleasure mine. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Jamie, that is, obviously very impressive. There's a lot to talk about there. But maybe if we can start in the very beginning, you have kind of a rags to riches, I guess, story that is self-described. I know you have your book out with a similar name. So we'd love to maybe start at the very beginning and hear about what your path was before you even got into financial services. If we can start there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, actually, I was 21 years old. I was married young to my now ex-spouse, had our first child. And I had a guy come over to my house who was training one of my buddies from high school. And, they were showing me this presentation on, how they help families get out of debt, save for retirement and everything else. Turned out it was one of these multi-level insurance agencies here in Canada, and they were quite large. And I took one look at it and I thought, here I am working in a factory, not doing what I feel like I was destined to do with my life. I was a wrestler, and, I say I wrestled full time and I went to the factory. That was my part-time thing because my only drive was really sport. And unfortunately, wrestling doesn't pay too much if you're a Canadian athlete. So I decided to jump in full time and ended up losing my house, my wife, the car. We struggled financially. Back when I got in the industry, guys, in 2001, it was actually mandatory here in Canada that you are a full-time agent. And I went from earning a full-time living. I was 21, but I already owned my own house and, had a family started. I was the sole breadwinner for the family. And I went and joined this company thinking I was going to be a millionaire. It was going to be amazing. And 10 years later, I was still struggling and kind of paycheck to almost paycheck. I achieved some accolades there, won a few fancy trips where you go on and you just can't afford the burgers at lunch. But, it was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy it. I wasn't one of these miserable broke people. I was actually excited about my life, even for those 10 years that I wasn't having a lot of financial success. And after that 10 years with that company, which I'm very thankful for, I learned so much about communication with people. It really, I almost became a man during the process in that company. And by the time I was 31 years old, it was like I was ready to do something to really, truly change my life. I met my wife a couple of years prior to resigning from that company in my late 20s, my now wife, Leanne. We've been together for 15 years, and we decided to leave that organization. And 2 years later, put our heads together and prayed about it and said, why don't we build something that takes some of the good from where we were, but leave behind some of the garbage and take the good from the independent brokerage world that we were now starting to experience some success. And that's when we came up with this crazy idea called Experior. And 10 and a half years later, it kind of worked out.
Okay, so a couple of follow-up questions there.
Sure.
One, we were talking before we started about what it takes to be successful, and that's really dedication and devotion. And so my question to you is, if you said you were going paycheck to paycheck for those first 10 years, you must have really been driven to stay in that industry and thinking that there was this shining light at the end of the tunnel to keep you going. So what kept you going for that period of time?
Probably Kool-Aid, to be honest. I'll tell you, I saw a lot of people that were there for years prior to me, some of the, key founder type people that had been around there for a while. And I really believe that the opportunity back when the original founder of that company was in it, and I came in later. I came in when they were, an independent company owned by a larger conglomerate, and then they later went public. But the founder of the company wasn't in it. And what I think is that if the founder of the company doesn't have their, if they're not in there, if they're not in the game, I feel like it becomes corporate and things do start to change. So I think the opportunity was amazing at one point. I just feel like I was a little bit too late to the race. And I kept seeing these people on stages at conventions, and you'd meet these amazing, some of them just amazing human beings. And they would tell you, you can do it and you can have what I have. And I believed it. And I actually think they believed it too, right? I don't think that they said it maliciously. I think they truly believed that because they had this big success that anyone could have it. Listen, I was a hard worker. I was 7 days a week. I mean, one of my only regrets in life is that I didn't get to see a lot of my two first children that I had with my ex-spouse. I became a weekend dad, and then that was like putting them with a nanny or a babysitter on the weekend so I could run appointments. One of my biggest regrets to this day is that I didn't spend enough time with my kids because I was so focused on the business. And to do that and still not come out on the other side with anything, I literally left with nothing. And a couple of years later, they even threw a lawsuit at me because I was, showing other agents how to get the hell out of there and come over with it. So it was like I did all that work for nothing. But I look back now, because now we're going back, I've been gone for 13 years since I left that company, or 12 years, whatever it's, 12, 13 years. And I look back now with a lot of thankfulness because I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't kind of go through those hard knocks, right? But when you're going through it, and I guess the other piece to that is, being excited around a lot of great leaders, met a lot of great people there. The other piece to that was I did have wins along the way. So it wasn't like I always struggled. Like I had some wins, we hit certain milestones that felt good. It's just when you have office expenses, my wife and I at the time had 4 children. We're a combined blended family. You got child support. You got a lot of things going on. So we were making to the world view a decent income. But because of our expenses and kind of where we were at with our business and investing back into it with the office expenses and so on, we were still really struggling by the end.
So you decided to take what you had been hearing from that company with that enthusiasm that they had, those people that had done really well saying you can do it too, and build a model where that was true, where people coming in could actually achieve that. And you came up with Experior. So first question, a lot of people struggle with coming up with a business name. What was your process to come up with the name Experior?
So it's not as cool a story as it could have been, but the first part of it is we actually started a company called Empirical. And Empirical was our baby. 6 months into building Empirical, we only had about 50 agents, but we got approached by these 3 gentlemen that promised us the moon and the sun and the stars. They had the tech platform, the back engine, they had the payroll figured out, everything. And like fools, we believed them, and we thought, hey, man, I knew a company that they worked with previously, and they had some credibility. They were senior executives there. So like fools, my wife and I gave up 75% ownership of the company Empirical. The name Empirical came from my best friend's wife. We were sitting around brainstorming ideas for a company, and she goes, Jamie, you're always talking about building an empire. And what about the name Empirical, right? And I'm like, empirical evidence and, based on, I was like, that's cool. It's based on facts, not theory, because I used to believe everything based on theory. So I thought that's cool. Well, fast forward 15 months into this partnership, giving up 75% ownership to these 3 other guys, so we're all equal partners, my wife and I being one of the equal partners. We told them we want our company back, and they kind of laughed at us and said, that's not how this works. I'm like, well, you guys work part-time at best, and I want out. And they let me get out, but with nothing. So then I didn't want to look like this guy. I'd left my former company after 10 years. Then we start this company called Empirical. And now I'm going to jump to this other company again. So I'm like, we got to keep the name similar. So I started looking up Latin words that start with E, because I'm like, Latin, pretty cool words. And then we found this word expertus. And then we found the feminine word version of expertus, which is Experior. And it means tried, tested, put to the test. And I'm like, oh, that is dope. So we went with Experior, and that's how the name came.
That's a cool story.
Yeah, and it sounds like that.
It's just too long. It would have been better if it was just Empirical from the start. Yeah, my best friend's wife thought it was cool. We're going to build an empire.
But what ended up happening was you ended up with a great name based off of, the Empirical sounds like it was a good name. I mean, I haven't heard of that company if it's still around.
They are, and we just a quick plug here. I think we do more business in a day than they did last year. Because, and I say that because I'm a competitor, and they tried to block me from getting contracts after we left. They tried to stop us, and they told the insurance carriers that Jamie is crazy. Don't give him a contract. He's never going to be able to make it in business, blah, blah, blah. And now we do more volume in a day than they do in a year. So it's like,
that's insane. Good for you, man. See, that's a great story. That is a great story. And I think Experior is a better name. So,
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right on.
So what was it, Joe, you might have been wanting to touch on this as well, but I guess the question there is, what was it that what kind of were the main things you identified right away that maybe should be changing or that you wanted to change and bring into the industry with Experior?
The first one for me was the ownership aspect. Because I was working with this company and they claimed that because they provide the training, the onboarding, the support and everything else, and they did all that, right? They help with the licensing, that they own your business. They own all your clients. If you leave, you don't get any residual income anymore. You don't get any passive residuals from everything you built. So when I walked away from that company, I got literally $0, other than I earned some equity in the public company. They had actually went public the year before I left. So I did have some stocks, which I quickly sold them as soon as I was vested because I just didn't want anything to do with them. Looking back now, their stocks went up 10x in value, so maybe I should have held on to it. But I couldn't. My integrity wouldn't let me. So I was like, no, I'm done with it. I was kind of bitter at the time. But, their stock's done amazing. But it was also the ownership part. And then the second piece, I guess two other pieces, was the compensation to the field. They just kept too much. A lot of the multi-level type companies, even in the US and Canada, they just keep too much. They don't pay a fair shake to the agent. They're not given what I believe is a fair amount to the agent. And then the last part is the diversity of products. We knew that you can't just sell one product with one company and do the best job for the client. So we made it a point of getting as many contracts as humanly possible as we grew.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I think, the integrity comes across, when you start saying that you want as much as possible to go to the agents, that, that's a difference. That's a vision that you had when you formed the company that obviously has paid many more dividends than the shares that you had in that company. And so tell us a bit about your journey over the last, few years where you've just exploded, right?
Yeah. Well, the great part is it was actually 5 years ago that we launched in the US, 5 years ago last month. But the pandemic hit shortly after. We opened up a head office location, which we still have the same spot for the last 5.5 years, 5 years or so. But it wasn't until 3 years ago that we actually got our first licensed agent in the US. So, we were going for like 2 years, pandemic hit. Now we're trying to just make sure that, hey, we had to switch to kind of Zoom and everything versus the live stuff that we're so familiar with. And we basically in 2019, I should say, to 2020 was the only year that we didn't experience at a minimum double-digit percentage growth. It was the only year. We basically flatlined. And at the end of the pandemic, at the end of that first year of the pandemic, we were like, hey, that was a win. We actually dipped quite a bit, but then came back up enough that we ended up flatlining over the year. And then every year since then, it's been an average of 50% growth year over year. This year is even more exponential. We're about 68% growth year over year. It's just amazing. I think a lot of founders of companies, they're too concerned with, I believe they're too concerned with what's the value of the company in the early stages, like how much can we make right away? And I never looked at that. I always looked at how much can we make and survive. That was my mindset. And I always felt like I'm a good producer. So if we ever get really trapped and I need an extra $100,000 that month, I'm going to go write my ass off a bunch of business. Like I'm going to do something to make sure the bills and the lights stay on. I remember we got hit with a lawsuit. It was early on in our company's growth 8 years ago. She's almost 9 years ago now, 8.5. And I remember we got hit with the lawsuit and we had some money in the bank, but not a lot. And I was like, you know what? Just in case, I'm going to sell my rental. And I sold I sold my cottage, which we were renting out at the time because our son got sick and we weren't able to go up there as much. So we sold the cottage and we sold one of the rental properties we have. And I actually decided at that time, I'm never going to have a rental property ever again because it takes too much headspace. I'm like, never again. I'm just going to focus on my business and that's what I'm good at. But we did that because we were living on slim margins, right? And we still have slim margins. The difference is our volume's up. right? So now we're at a point where the company's valued somewhere in the tune of 100 million. And with current trajectory, and this is with, a CTO that works with us and also a CFO, both were a part of a publicly traded company. And they basically showed us some formulas and things and this and that. And based on our track record over the last 3 years, what would that look like over the next 3 years, just with the same growth we're having? Because with the growth, it doesn't mean that all your expenses grow to the same degree. Mm-hmm. Well, our expenses have obviously increased, but not to the same degree. And our company should be somewhere in the tune of $1 billion operation inside of the next 3 years, which fires me up because then we're 10% of the way to our goal of 10 billion. So it's cool.
That is insane. That is insane.
We're pumped.
Now, you publicly traded? I want to know how I can get some shares.
No, we're not. No. It's an idea, by the way, but I don't know what the plan is going to be. We do have people offering now with like insurance companies, and even in the US, we've already had carriers offer to buy a chunk of us or buy all of us. And we're just like, you know what, we're in growth mode, baby. And we've been very economically sound. We've been very smart with our financials. We don't carry any debt. And we just keep saying there's no need for us to do it right now. My wife and I only own 75 to 80% of it. I think we're now closer to 75. We just did a big onslaught of shares for our executive directors. So all of our executive directors are also shareholders in the company.
That's fantastic. It sounds like over the years you've if I'm not mistaken, you really focused on reinvesting in the company to help it grow. And that's a great point that you made about a lot of founders trying to make a quick buck and take that quick buck, as opposed to having that long-term vision where you see 10 billion and you're just plugging away to get there as hard and fast as you can by reinvesting, which is something I think that for leaders is a lesson to learn, right? Reinvest in your company early on, and then you'll eventually get that unstoppable momentum.
Yeah. And it's hard too, as a founder and that people that are watching your podcast, and that it's so hard because sometimes you start making a bit of money for the first time ever. And it's like, man, I want to buy that sports car I always want. Man, I want to take those trips and I want to take that time off and whatever. And I was like, man, I'm going to be here for a long time, God willing. I'm starting to exercise, dropped a few pounds, put a few back on, but kind of a yo-yo. But I just believe that, if we do keep reinvesting, we're going to see such a bigger return on our investment than if I had bought some more real estate on the side. That's just where my head. I'm not saying don't buy real estate. It's a very sound investment, but it's just not for me. People say, oh, you missed out on the Bitcoin. You could have bought it because people were offering me Bitcoin when it was, I don't know, whatever, pennies or dollars, whatever. It was very low. And they're like, oh, you didn't buy any Bitcoin back then. Didn't you know about it? I'm like, yeah, I knew about it, but I didn't care about it. Like, yeah, I could make my millions there, but I chose to focus all my life's energy into building this company and not letting anything else distract.
You can control the direction of the company, whereas you can't control the direction of Bitcoin or real estate.
That's right. And I hear too much talk about multiple streams of income. Got to have multiple streams of income. It's like, okay, but the guy, Robert Kiyosaki, who told you that in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he had one stream of income, but it was from multiple houses. Okay, so don't mix it up. He was all in on real estate. He became a multimillionaire. Then he started to diversify. But too many people want to do everything and be every jack of all trades, and then they never master anything.
I think, Jamie, it's interesting what you're saying, because it really touches on what we were talking about offline before we started is hard work and discipline. And I think, maybe that started for you early on and when you were an athlete. So I guess, you have 6,000 agents now. For those coming in, you see it all the time, I'm sure. Is that the sort of number one thing that you think about that is an indicator of success? And what else should people have, or what should those leaders be looking at when they're hiring?
Well, it's interesting. I had a big meeting this morning with a gentleman that we're actually bringing on staff who's been helping us out kind of on a consulting basis, but now he's going to be coming on board with us full time. And he was responsible for a large public company and a big acquisition that they did years ago with another big insurance agency. He was actually responsible for firing their founder, which is so funny. And he was making some points to me because I was talking about how we do our share program and how for us it's so critical. My mindset has always been licensed agents. And I talked to him about that with the shared thing that we're working on, a deal with some acquisition that we're working on. I said, everything to me is about licensed agents. He goes, Jamie, what I need you to start to think about, because if you think that this company could go public one day or you want to sell, you do want to start to think about EBITDA a little bit. How does it, how does the license agent affect that? And I'm like, well, all I know is this. Every time our license agent count goes up, our volume goes up. When our license agent count goes up, more people make more money, our EBITDA climbs up. And we're looking at financials now once every month with our finance manager. And it's like, all I'm seeing is license agent go up, everything's going up. But he says, okay, I want to break it down to a more visible metric. I forget the word he used, something fancy. I'm not that guy. And I'm like, okay. So my answer, Kane, is license agents equals more money, more volume, more families help, more everything. But you talk to the guy that I'm about to hire that's way smarter than me, he's going to say there's more to it than that. So stay tuned for our second podcast. For me, it's always been about license agents for me.
So when you're hiring somebody and either a currently licensed agent or you're going to mentor them to get their license, what would you say a metric for success? Or if I was sitting in front of you and you were interviewing me, what would you be looking for from me for you to feel comfortable that, yeah, I think this person might be successful?
That's a great question. I think just transparency. If I can get a sense that I would trust this guy with my kids, I would trust this gal to sell insurance to my mom. That's what I look for. And my radar's getting so much better over the years. I mean, it used to be I just trust everybody. Now it's like I tend to be a little more cynical now, only because you've been burnt a few times and people promise you everything. And it's a lot of times the people that tell you they're going to be the biggest hero are the ones that they'll stab you in the back, and it's the ones that kept their mouth shut and went to work are the ones that you're like, oh my gosh, you did amazing, right? So I think I just learned to, I guess, trust my gut a little bit more when I'm talking with people. So I make a lot of decisions. I lead with my heart. I just bring my brain with me now, because back at my old company, I led with my heart. I had passion, but I just didn't have my brain attached to it, So, but I definitely kind of make more of an emotional decision about stuff like that.
Okay. What do you think makes the individual, like over their first year, what will drive their success? What do they need to do to be successful?
So and I don't want to sound like Simon Sinek, but it starts with why. I honestly believe that because it's a tough industry, and so is real estate, right? You guys know, so is the mortgage world. Now we look at it and go, man, this is easy. It's like, taking candy from a baby, right? This is so simple, right? Except it's ethical. But it's like, it was so hard for us in the beginning, though. So we always have to remember that. So what kept us going, Joe and Kane? What kept us on the drive? And for me, it was just the goals that I had, like this vision I had for my life, what I could accomplish. It wasn't because, I'm going to get better and then I'm going to love this job more. That was a part of it. I had to get better. And as I got better, I did enjoy it more. But it was all about, I want to win. Like, I was a competitor in wrestling and I never got to the Olympics. This was my way now. Okay, I want to win. I want to win in business. I want to win big time. So it became more like, this is like my scoreboard now, right? What we can do in the industry. So I'm very competitive. The other thing that I've recently read a book by Patrick Bet-David, who's actually one of our competitors in the US. And guy's phenomenal. He's built a great business. He actually sold to another large entity, but he still operates it, I believe, along with another platform called Valuetainment, big YouTube channel. And I read one of his books this year. And as I read it, I couldn't help but think that this simple guy born in Fergus, Ontario, is a genius. I was like, how am I so smart? Yeah, it's like, I did this by accident. And the book is titled Choose Your Enemies Wisely. And as I'm reading the book, I'm like, oh my God, this is why I'm so fired up all the time. Because I have people that have said, I'm not going to make it in the business. This company's not going to last. You guys are going to go out of business. And these are our competitors, mind you, not like my friends and family. They always supported me. But it was like all the competitors and all the people that didn't like that we were taking agents from them. And they're all like, that company's a joke. It's not going to last. We're called the candy company because we look good on the outside, but it tastes bad, or it's bad on the inside, whatever. All this crap. And I'm like, and they're going to go out of business. Well, that was 6 years ago. I mean, we're still here. What's up? So the competition and that having that enemy, whether they know they're your enemy or not, I think having that enemy drives you, right? And maybe in your world, in the learning platform that you have with Remix, maybe that enemy is another learning platform. It's like, we're going to take this market share. And it's not that you hate them or you want to destroy them. It's just, you want to just be better, right? And that just drives me.
I think it's really important what you said to, especially those coming in, like being a new entrepreneur, really in any field, is knowing what your guiding light is, so to speak, right? Like knowing what you're going after and keeping that front of mind, because there will be failures and hiccups and challenging days and times that you do have to keep that in front of you to make sure you know why you're doing it, why you're getting up and doing it. And Jamie, when you, especially maybe when you were starting out, like when you were starting out as an agent, actually doing deals, was there anything that you found that was different about the role that you expected? Like I'm thinking about maybe for some of our listeners who might be in a different industry completely, or even an ancillary industry, and they're thinking about becoming a life agent. I guess, what is it like? Or are there any misconceptions, or what might they expect?
I think when I started, I was 21, didn't have much credibility in the financial world at all with my family. They knew I worked in a factory and I wrestled. I mean, and I was a good, decent kid. I wasn't, a criminal by any stretch, but I didn't have any credibility with friends and family and stuff. A lot of my friends weren't really in the market for life insurance. So what I didn't realize is that I would have to talk to a lot more people than I expected. I had to prospect way more than what I assumed, because when I saw it, I was like, man, you gotta be a dummy not to have life insurance if you have kids. I mean, right? You're like, what's wrong with you, right? You got kids, you're not gonna have life. Like everyone's worried about kids' education plan when little baby comes out, but priority number one is life insurance, not kids' education. Kids' education second to that, maybe even third to your retirement ahead of that. So I knew right away that this is a no-brainer. Everyone should own it. And then I was blown away at how many dumb people there were out there, right? Now, that was my mindset as a 21-year-old, right? Now I see that, there's value. You got to show the value. And some people just don't understand it. They've never been exposed to it, or they think it's all a ripoff because, all insurance is a ripoff. And it's like, okay, well, if all insurance is a ripoff, would you not want your family to be taken care of if you pass away? Well, of course I would. Well, the only way to do that for most people, because most people don't come from rich families, right? Some do. But if you don't come from a rich family, you need to have life insurance if you want your spouse and children's standard of living to at a minimum stay the same, and maybe even be a little bit better to help cope with the grieving process, right? So I think when it really struck a chord for me, when I paid, I can't remember how many years into the business I was, but I always loved it and I was passionate about it and I knew that people needed it. But until I paid my first death claim at my first company, it got in my heart. Like I was like, holy crap. And by the way, some of my recent like over the last 10 years, I've paid death claims. Two of them that stand out both of them were 40-year-old males, and both of them died by suicide, and both leaving behind a wife and children. And listen, I can't bring dad back, but when you deliver a check for 300 grand or 400 grand, and they're able to pay off the mortgage, right? Or they're able to pay off the debts and cover the funeral, it just gives them peace of mind. One of them, to this day, I'm still in contact with. One of them kind of went by the wayside. I haven't spoke to her in years, but the other one I'm still in constant communication with. She does all her kids' education with me, retirement planning and everything. And those kids are set now, right? And at the time, these kids were like 8 and 9 years old. And when you get to make that kind of impact, it just changes everything for you. I had one lady that was on her deathbed and she knew that she had less than 6 months to live. And I just wrote a policy on her 1 year prior, and she's only 62 years old. And she was there and she had her son and her couple of grandchildren there who were adult children. And she came over to me as I was leaving because we were kind of planning everything. And it was emotional because kids are there and the grandkids and they're all crying. The mom, who's the grandmom/mom, was the only one that was in good spirits, kind of joking and having fun. And, it's funny, side story. The policy was less than 2 years old and it was going to be like another 4 months. So it wouldn't be in the contestability period. So therefore the death claim would get issued quicker. And I said, listen, you're a strong woman. I said, if you could just hold on 4 more months, your kids will go through a lot less stress with getting the death. You took it so well, we were laughing. But she ended up passing away within like a month of that meeting. But it got contested. And then of course it did deliver because everything was good with the application and stuff. But I'll tell you something. She said to me when I was leaving, she gave me a hug and she whispers into my ear and she goes, Jamie, you are the angel sent to me from God. Thank you so much. I don't know where my family would be without you. And I'm just like, I break down. I'm crying.
Yeah.
And I only met this lady like twice before, did a policy with her. And it's like the impact that we can have in someone's life. And we're just out there running around. We're making commissions and we're getting the dollar in our account. And what we don't realize sometimes, unless we sit back and really think about it, is we're really impacting people's lives. We're really making a difference.
I think that's the most important part that people coming into the industry they don't realize. It's like you say, we talk about business building, we talk about getting clients, talking to people, how to talk to people. That emotional aspect of when you see the good work that you've done helping families, and you keep mentioning that you're there helping families, which is exactly what's being done. Do you find that it makes a difference in new agents' lives I guess, hopefully a new agent is around several years before they have to make that payout. But when they do you find that it changes their outlook on the business, and how does that affect them?
I feel like it, and I've seen it happen with a couple agents, even in Experior, that death claims already, many death claims, but just some that stand out. Guy Mario, just to see his emotion when he's talking about, Jamie, this client in this situation, it's like, oh my God. He goes, you wouldn't believe what they had before I sat down with them. They had this small little policy that were sold, and it was their parents bought it on them, and they didn't know that they needed life insurance. Because some people just think, oh, I have life insurance, and you think you're good. But that might have been a $5,000 whole life policy that grandma bought for your mom, for you when you were a kid, and they think they have life insurance, like we're good. It's like, no, you can't even cover a cremation with that, So a lot of people think they have protection when they don't have the right amount. So when we can make that difference, again, it's like we get to sort of be the saviors in their financial lives when that devastating time comes. I just think for me, I had it in me. Like I really felt the emotion of selling what I sold in the beginning, even before that. But I've said to this, even in group meetings I've had with people and stuff, I've said, like, until you've actually had a death claim and you're handing a check to that customer, it doesn't connect the same way. It's like living it and feeling it. There's just a different, like, you can tell someone what it's like to have a kid, but unless you've had a kid, it's hard to express that emotion. It's like that kind of thing, right? It's you don't know how to explain it.
That really is an amazing story. Like, you gave me goosebumps when you were telling me that. It's like, wow, that must have been really intense after that happened, or when it was happening. My wife, one of her friends a couple of years ago passed away. Her husband passed away on the job and had almost no insurance as well. I think it was like 10 grand or something, just enough to cover the funeral. And then she was, doing GoFundMes. They had like 3 kids, and that really stuck with me as well, because she knew her so well that and that was, I was already, like, we were already doing the course, the life insurance course. So I had talked to all my friends about the same thing. As soon as you start learning about this, even a little bit, all the possibilities, not just for death, disability, critical illness, all this stuff, it's like, wow, it probably will happen in your life at some point to either you or someone you love. So you just need to have that protection. Yeah.
And actually, real quick, before we go to the next one, and going back to when new people are getting started, one thing that kind of got into my head right away, and this was a lot to do with the training that I went through with that company, and they really got you, and I say they brainwash you, but in some ways they brainwash you good, right? They kind of clean out some of your crap thinking. But one of the things that they said to me is, like, what is worse? Someone saying no to you in your family, your friends, whoever, and saying, no, I'm not interested. We're good. We don't need life insurance. We already have life insurance, whatever they say. Is it worse to have that? Or is it worse to know that one day, if they happen to pass away and you never spoke to them, like, how would you feel if you never spoke to them because you were afraid? And then you find out that they're setting up the GoFundMe accounts and they're struggling, and having that in your mind, that if I had have asked them, what if they had have said yes? And what if they had have went ahead with it? And what impact could I have made on that family? So I kind of took it on myself that if you know who I am, you're going to know I sell life insurance. There's not a single, I got 5,000 Facebook friends. They all know I sell life insurance, right?
If you understand the value of it, then your passion ends up being, I have to tell everybody. That's everybody right. Has to know this. Like, one of the world's best kept secrets. If I don't tell everybody that I come into contact with, I'm failing them. Yeah. And that's what a fantastic way of looking at your business. And
it's like your life's mission, right?
Yeah, that's an incredible mission, right?
Yeah,
and that's like a generic grassroots way of growing your business in feeling that mission so passionately, and that's something that I'm sure that you can and you do on a regular basis convey to new people and when you do the training is that type of story that makes such an impact. And even though they haven't maybe handed a check over, I'm sure part of them understands that, you know what, we got to get out there and tell everybody about this.
Absolutely. And I'm in a lot of Facebook groups online, life insurance groups, and there's a lot of lead junkies out there. And there's nothing wrong with buying leads and all that stuff, but some of them will try to attract agents to recruit them and saying, hey, don't join a company where they try to get you to talk to your friends and family and, just buy leads. These are people that want insurance. And it's like, every time I see these posts, I don't comment on them, but in my mind, I'm thinking, do you even understand what we do? Like, you're telling me that because they're your friends and family, you don't want to bother them about your business. We're not talking about selling shoes, for crying out loud. I get it. You don't want to bug your dad to buy Nikes from you because you don't want to offend them. And I get the question, well, Jamie, do I have to talk to my friends and family? And I just say, no, just the people you care about most.
Yeah. Who else would you talk to first, if not your friends and family, because you want them to be protected?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a pushy thing, an aggressive thing. You don't call them and bug them every 5 minutes, but at least let them know what you're doing.
You want to educate them, right? You're passionate about that. Jamie, I want to ask you something that you touched on earlier. You mentioned, I guess, one of your maybe regrets might be when you started out, that you were working on the business 7 days a week and you missed some of the early time with your kids. How do you think that could have been different and still have found the success? So, some advice for those that are maybe in a similar position now, but what can they do to still be in the business and focus on it, but make some time? How do they have that balance or that blend?
So my wife and I, it's a little different now because we're in the process of adopting 5 children. That's how we got from 4 to 9 overnight. Some people wonder, how'd you do that, right? A super sperm, it's not like my 44-year-old sperm to do that. No, this was we're in the process of adoption through the foster system, but it's just beautiful kids. Anyways, so now that there's 6 under one roof, 3 of our children are grown up out of the house. But our lives are busy. So number one, your partner is your wife, right? Not your kids. Your partner is your wife, right? Or your husband or your common law spouse, whatever. For me, my partner is Leanne, my wife. And she has to come first. So I need to make sure that I'm dating my spouse. Now, with this many children, it gets very chaotic. We've got teenage girls now, so we can't really leave them home alone sometimes because they get into trouble. And I came home twice now. The second time, we're like, fine, we broke down and let her keep it. But she brought home a cat because we were out on date night. She brings home a cat twice. And she thought she could hide it from me, and I'm allergic to it. All of a sudden, I'm getting allergies, and she got a freaking cat. Anyways.
How long could she hide that for?
I think like a minute, but it wasn't like she thought she could hide it forever. But anyway, this is the brain cells of a 13-year-old girl. Anyways. We make sure that we prioritize each other, that we do take the time. It's not as much as we'd love it to be, but I just say date your spouse. Take one night every week, turn your phone off, and date your spouse, right? And it doesn't have to cost a lot of money because I know some people just go for a walk, right? Go to a mall, window shopping, do something, right? Go bowling, go to a movie, whatever. But I think you got to date your spouse. And then secondly is, and by the way, I booked that appointment in. Almost everyone in our sales force that's getting to know me on a personal level, they know that Thursday nights they can't get a hold of me. So at 4:30 tonight, because it's a Thursday as of this record, I am unavailable, right? Some people think I died because I'm usually quick to get back to them. They'll message me 3 times, everything okay? And then next thing, I get another message an hour later. Oh, dude, I forgot it's your date night. I'll talk to you tomorrow, right? So it's like you got to put your relationships with your spouse and then with your children. They got to be a priority. Taking that day off on the weekend. I used to think that Experior was going to go under if I didn't answer a call. 5 or 6 years ago, I realized our company is not going to go under if I miss a phone call and get back to the person the next day, right? But I was so high strung about it. And it was once I realized that the world's going to keep turning. My wife had to tell me this, Jamie, you're not the God of this universe. Like if you take a day off, it's okay. Everything's going to be all right. You sure? I've never done this before. So I think that's the key, is just prioritizing. And if you're going to take a day off, take the day off.
I think the good practical advice that you mentioned, at least what I took from it, is that you actually scheduled that in. So if you are a busy person, schedule it a month ahead of time, months ahead of time, if you have to. Make it on your calendar, make an appointment, block off that time, and that way you can work with it, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, I'm going to do it at some point," right?
And I think the weekly idea is fantastic. That's something people know, and you build your schedule around that. And if you're unwilling to book anything in that, I mean, that's the problem I have, Jamie, is that I do time blocking during the day, and then I delete the time block because I put something else in there. I'm supposed to be doing one thing, but it's like, I don't have to do that. It's a personal problem. It's an issue I need to talk to a therapist about.
Yeah.
One of the things that is so fascinating about me about me. One of the things that's so fascinating about you, I find, is your integrity and the way you look at things, and like the idea that you had when you formed the company that agents deserve to get more of their commission. So maybe tell me a bit about that concept, that in the multi-level, and we were talking offline about the difference between the US and Canada. Like, what has made the Experior such a success as your focus on agents, being so focused on the success of your agents?
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm going with.
When you have kids, right, you want to see your kids do better than you. These past 2 weeks, I've had the pleasure. So we have a ring when you hit 100,000, right? We have people doing that a couple times a week now, hitting this 100,000 in income, right? It's not like cumulative income. That's like 12-month cash flow. You hit 100 grand, you get a cool Super Bowl ring. Well, we've also got rings at $250,000, $500,000, 750, and then we've got another ring, which is like a cool upgraded one with this beautiful purple stone, and it's just gorgeous. And it's the $1 million ring. So if you've made $1 million, and this is, by the way, personal commissions, direct deposit into your bank account. This isn't points. This isn't cumulative in your lifetime. We've had 2 people already this month cross over 1 million of income for the first time in their life in 12 months. Now, here's the crazy part. When I met them 8.5 years ago, they were at the same company I was at, and both of them were struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. They were there for 16 years, the one guy. The other guy was there for 19 years, and they were still paycheck to paycheck. They come over to Experior, doing the exact same business, same industry, right? Similar model. And now they're making, both of them just crossed over 1 million in income. I think the big difference is when you're in a recruiting type of model, you have to have something that's also not just going to be able to look good from the outside looking in, because anybody can look good from the outside looking in, especially to people that are greenies and they don't really know the industry. No matter what number you dangle in front of them, it's going to look good, right? If you're doing mortgages, right? And I'm trying to recruit you into the mortgage world. Well, we know that, let's say the typical mortgage agent, I don't know the exact numbers, but let's say they make 80 basis points on a mortgage. Let's just say that might be a little high. Well, I'm not sure. But that means if you sell a $500,000 mortgage, man, you're going to make $4,000, right? Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
But what if I'm down the street and I'm a little bit of a snake, and I say, listen, the mortgage industry, it's so amazing. If you go out and help someone with a small mortgage, because man, $500,000 is not even that much anymore. Small mortgage, you're going to make $2,000. That's probably more than you make in a week. Oh yeah, it is. And I'll bet you probably have to work 40 hours in a week and you don't even make $2,000. Yeah, man, yeah. Well, listen, doing mortgages, it's probably 5 or 6 hours of work. 5 or 6 hours. You imagine in 5 or 6 hours, I can show you how to sell mortgages, and you're going to make $2,000.
Man, like, I'm sold.
Once I get you in, because you're like, yeah, mortgages. First of all, you realize, damn, I got to prospect 100 people to get one, or I got to, whatever the number is, right? And when you finally get the one and you make that $2,000, next thing you know, you start hearing whispers. You start having competitors talking to you, and they're going, how much you making? Well, they're paying me, I think it's called 40 basis points. 40. Bro, you're getting robbed. My guy's paying me 70. I know a guy making 85. And all of a sudden you start losing people, right? And this is what's happened, I think, with these models. It's like they've been able to keep you delusional for a while. But now with the internet and things are out there and I just think that people are getting exposed now, right? And some people don't like that. I like it. That's why I think transparency is the only way to be. I literally share our comp plan from me, the CEO of the company, to the world. I share it on a YouTube video, and it's not private. Anybody can see it because I don't have to hide the damn thing.
Right.
You're not going to see the CEO of any other company going through their comp plan and how it works and everything, because they're going to get like, competitors are going to be like, oh my God, they're that bad. I knew they were bad, but that they're that bad, I'm going to go to their people, right? So
This is one of the things that when we met, Jamie, and we met, I don't know, like 10 years ago now, we loved how authentic you were and genuine. And I think that really comes across probably with every conversation you have with anyone newer in your company. So I can see how you would get to that 6,000. I'm sure you're going to crush it beyond that. Just on what you're saying, I'm curious about the role now of agents and how you see that maybe changing over the next years, or if you're seeing any changes now with technology and emergence of AI. And are you seeing anything there, or are you anticipating anything there in the next few years?
you know what I think? I think that the business is going to get a little bit easier for agents, especially from suitability for customers. Right now, it's kind of been like you got to go to different softwares and platforms and things and price out stuff like that. There's a lot of unknowns, right? And you go to like some of these different companies out there, and even within Experior and different organizations with teams that we have, and you got some groups that are just sold on whole life insurance. You got to sell whole life to most people. Some are universal life and some are term, but they'll still sell others, but it's like that's our focus. I think what's happening now is because of the education with AI as well, Kane, we've recently hired a full-time staff and then a contractor just on the AI side of things that are building out stuff for us. And what we are working on right now is where you can type in, I've got a husband and wife, 45 and 46 years of age. They have 3 young children. This is their income. This is their debt. And you type a story into AI. What can I possibly offer them? Now, we can do like a quick dime method, which is what's your debt, what's your income that we need to replace, what's your mortgage balance, and do you want to cover your kids' education? That's the DIME. We do that as well, but that doesn't get into the weeds of, should this person have a universal life? Are they in a position? Are they already maxing out their TFSA to make the tax advantages of the universal life make sense? This is just buying a term policy and having a TFSA over here and maybe a whole life as a buffer if for expenses on final expenses. So this AI is going to help us with that, and it's going to continue to get better and better and better. The scary thing about AI is, the fact that they could take over humans, right? Whatever. I mean, eventually they're going to be smarter than us as they learn more things. But I really like it for the idea of technology, just simplifying things for the agent. One thing I don't believe will happen in my lifetime anyways, I don't believe that human beings will be replaced as agents. I always think, and even mortgage agents and real estate agents,
Mm-hmm.
and insurance agents and P&C insurance agents, I don't think that AI or technology will ever replace the one-on-one communication with a customer. And I see that especially in the insurance and the financial services market, because there are so many investment options. There are so many insurance products. I don't think that you can just type something in as a customer. Now, I know I said with the AI, you could get to some kind of answer on what the need is, but there still has to be the right structure of the product. And I think it just takes a human being to explain that to someone and to build that trust with them. So I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it is. And there's also the emotional part of it. I mean, we like Joe and I, we talk about this a lot too. Like the human spirit means something, right? There's a humanity piece to all of this, especially when you start talking about, like to your point, insurance and large transactions like mortgages. I think maybe with different generations that are to come, but I think you're right. In our lifetime, I think for now, I tend to agree. But it is interesting, and it can help on the back end, like you talked about. It can help a lot with taking away some of the work that maybe won't be necessary for the agents. Yeah.
Actually, it was funny when my wife and I she does all the interview and the process with our management team. And one of the things that she was very clear on is, we're not replacing anyone with AI. He's like, okay, got it. He goes, because some companies, they want to bring in AI so they can get rid of some people. I said, no. So my wife says, no, we're keeping every staff that we have, unless there's someone that we're going to fire anyways. We're keeping every staff that we have. This is just to help make their jobs easier, and so that we can continue to grow and expand, and maybe don't have to add as many staff, but we definitely don't want to replace staff. And I think a lot of companies are going that route. I was listening to an audio book recently, and one of them was a story about a company that was getting AI, and they were a little scared about it, and that was one of their concerns. And he says all that AI has done for their company is it's just enhanced their productivity, so that the customer, it's called Built to Last.
Okay.
I'm about halfway through it right now. So so it's just interesting that people are afraid of AI. And I think my wife and I were a little bit too, might be a little bit on the conspiracy theory side, like, oh, it's going to take over and we're going to have robots running the world. But now I see it more as a tool that we're going to be able to piggyback and use to help us grow further and faster.
I'm in line with that thinking as well. I think that some people also, what's going to happen with jobs and what's going to happen with the roles. And I think what will probably happen is you'll just do more because you can do more. So those that are already successful might be able to do even more business if they are willing and wanting to actually use the tools that they have available to enhance their work, as you were mentioning. So yeah, I love that take.
You know, funny story, the one part where AI worries me is because, you know, when I met my wife and my exes and all that stuff, right? I met them face to face, communicate with them, you had to talk to them. But now a lot of people are on the Tinder deal and all the different online things. And all I keep thinking with AI is you could be the most unbelievable human being to this woman that you're courting to try and get her to meet with you by using AI. So even if you're a dumbass, you could be like the coolest, nicest, most amazing dude. Because all you do is you just take, how do I respond to this girl in this situation, AI?
Right.
And they're going to give you something so cool and the best emojis to go with it. You just copy and paste. All of a sudden, this woman, they're meeting some dude that they don't even know who he is when they meet him. Like, you can't even speak proper. You know, like that kind of worries me for the vulnerability of people out there when they think that they're dealing with a real human and it turns out to be a robot.
Yeah, and you know, there's it's coming fairly quickly where you have interactive video AI avatars that can look like the individual. You know, you give them your likeness, and then it's using Chat GPT in the background to formulate answers, and you can give it information specific to your industry or to yourself. And then you know, the fear that I have as well is, like Kane was mentioning, maybe not in our generation, but generations coming up, as people get more distant from that face-to-face, well, not even face-to-face, but person-to-person live interaction, physical interaction, and more accepting of doing things online, you know, by video, that it'll be easier for these video avatars to have these types of conversations. Because in my mind, it always boils down to a relationship. I want to deal with you and have a relationship with you, not with software. And if you use AI to give me a great recommendation, that's fantastic. But, you know, we have the relationship. And that's what worries me, is that at some point it's going to be like that movie, was it Her?
There's also Black Mirror, a bunch of them in there. Like, you can just let your avatars date, and then, you know, whichever, you know, they can figure out who you like together.
Yeah, there's some dark ones on the Black. I saw a couple of those shows. you guys.
Well, listen, where do you see Experior going in the next few years? What are your plans?
Yeah, so again, we don't know with whether becoming publicly traded it makes sense, or, you know, some type of strategic partnership, partial acquisition of sort. We don't know for sure. You know, as long as it makes sense for our agents and for our team, we'll look at that. People wonder about, you know, what's the point of having shares in a private company like ours? Well, number one is I have a standing offer. If you want to sell your shares, let me know. I got buyers. I'll buy them. You know, like if you want to sell back your shares, I don't care. Matter of fact, you can still be with Experior, working with us and have shares. If you want to sell us your shares, you need it, we'll buy them back gladly. So there is a standing offer, and it's based on our current valuation at the time. If you want to sell, we'll buy the shares. So possibly going public, because that sounds really cool. However, if it doesn't make sense financially and if it doesn't, you know, support our model, then we wouldn't do that. The thing that I do know for certain is that I would always like to have a say on the board, and a strong say. So we don't want our board to get too large. We're at 5 right now. My wife and I represent 2 of them. So we can get voted out as far as decision making. However, usually it's my wife and I voting against each other. Sheldon's always on my side. Nathania's always on her side. And Sean is the swing vote. I joke with people that Sean Redford is actually the decision maker at Experior. We're always over here. But I do see us becoming the largest powerhouse in the industry in the insurance world. Without a question, we didn't come here just to have a good time, make some money. We came here to dominate. We came here to be number one. My ultimate goal is to beat the number 1 and 2 organizations combined. To my knowledge, Primerica and World Financial Group are the 2 largest in terms of distribution. Collectively, they have a little over 200,000 agents. So my immediate goal in North America, which would be Canada and US and soon Mexico, is to be at 250,000 licensed agents, which would put us ahead of both those companies combined. So that's kind of my short-term goal. My long-term goal is that we're global in multiple other countries. We're actually building the technology for it. We're investing several million more each year now into doing these microservice sites that we need to do. I don't know all the tech verbiage around it. Right now, we're kind of on a macro platform. So we've got our developers and we're adding more and more. We only had 30 developers at the start of the year. Now we got 40 of them and we continue to add. We're building behind the scenes so that when we go to Vietnam, when we go to Philippines, Mexico, or wherever it makes sense, like where our model would be effective, and with obviously some of the strategic relationships we have with existing agents, we have like a massive Filipino and Vietnamese and East Indian, Nigerian. We got a large demographics in certain areas, Mexicans, or Mexican Americans. So we have so many great people that know so many great people in these countries. So we're like, we have to go global at some point. No one else has done it. Just like no other Canadian company has ever went south of the border in our industry. Well, no American or Canadian company has gone global with their company. And that's what we want to do.
Well, you know what? As competitive as you are, Jamie, this is, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be you. Yeah. You know what? I ever since I met you, I just felt that competitive vibe and yeah, I mean, you're killing it and your authenticity comes across whenever you talk. And I think that's, that has to be a great factor in your success because people must love working with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I'll tell you, I might be an ass at times, but I'll never be a liar. At least not intentionally. My wife's like, well, you said this once. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't know. But I will not intentionally deceive anybody because first of all, my memory is so short. I'll forget what I BS'd and then I'll end up getting caught anyway. It's just not going to work out.
But you know what? That's what people need to know is what to expect from somebody, right? And if they know that they're always going to get the truth from you and your legitimate opinion without any outside BS trying to push them in a specific direction, you're just going to be honest. Then it's easy to deal with somebody like that. And from our experience in dealing with people, there's a minority of people who have that trait.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the higher you go up, I find that it's even more rare. I see the way some of these operations run, and it's like, how do you sleep at night? To each their own.
I'm sure you sleep very well at night.
I sleep very well, other than I'm freaking my brain's racing. But it's not because I regret or don't own what I did.
Well, you know what, Jamie? This has been an absolute joy and a pleasure talking with you. We'd love to have you back again in the next several months and see how things are progressing. And you know what? We'll give a shout out to your book as well, and that is You Can't Fall Off the Floor. So that's available on Amazon if anybody's interested, and I think that they should be interested because it's the byline is the rags to riches story of a team disrupting the entire insurance industry. So if that's not enough to get you excited about reading that book, I don't know what is. So check that out. And Jamie, like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure. We appreciate your time. And I hope you have a wonderful date night tonight with Leanne.
Appreciate it. This has been a pleasure as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the $1 Billion Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode.
For more in-depth entrepreneurial insights, follow us on social media. And for more info on the show, go to billiondollarpodcast.com.
See you next time.